My name is Hermie. I'm currently in Houston, Texas, in the United States. And um, and so if everyone is just now joining for this session, I just want to let you know, please take care of yourself. Um, we're just going to take it easy for this session. And if you need to get up, get something to eat. I know some of you have been on since the start of the International Women's Day Expo. Like I said, if you need to eat, get something to drink, feel free to do that. Like, don't even worry, can stay off camera, get on camera whenever you want. And just feel like, you can do this all at your leisure. And so what I'm going to do is in this session is I'm going to give you a breakdown of the activities we're going to do. So I'm going to show you some basic stitches and also how to sew on a button. And then we're going to apply what we learned. And then I'll show you some finished projects that I have so you can have some ideas of what you can do once you get these basic stitches down. And so to start, I really love the concept of this year's theme, which is pleasure. And for me, sewing is an activity that I really love to do whenever I feel really stressed out. Something I've been doing for a long time. When I was younger, my mom taught me how to sew and to use a sewing machine when I was maybe 10 or 11. So I've been sewing for a long time. I'm 37 now, so I've been sewing for a long time. And so sometimes, it's great to just start working on something because I put all my focus into it. And it really does for me sort of quiet a lot of things, a lot of anxiety sometimes, or feeling like, I don't have control over something. And so when I'm working on something, I can have that sense of accomplishment that I started it and I finished it. Or, that maybe I need to put it away for a little bit, and that's okay too. And then along those lines, just kind of thinking about craft itself, like for some reason, sewing seems to be a little bit of an archaic thing to people, to where it just seems like a lost sort of art in a way. Some people have never used a sewing machine, have never even purchased sewing needles, and we'll usually take stuff to the cleaners, and so that's why I want to help give people some skills to feel like you can do this yourself, and then also have fun, not just use sewing as a means to be productive and just fix something, but that you can also create things. And that sort of leads us into something that I wanted to share. So when Alicia approached me about this session, and when I learned it was about pleasure, like something clicked in my mind. And so as we get started, I did want to share a little bit of an essay from this book that I really love. It's called In Praise of Hands. And this book is really special to me because it's one that I found when I was still in university here at Houston. And I think that's one of the biggest things I miss is going to the library, having access to the library there, because ever since I was a kid, like it was the first place I could go by myself was the library. And so I would always love, picking a section, usually the craft section, and not really looking for anything in particular, just starting on one end and just combing through all the way to the other side just to find something that maybe sparked my interest, that I was curious about. And the way I found this book was I periodically look up this author. His name is Octavio Paz. He was from Mexico, was an author, poet, political activist, and he was someone that I also discovered on my own. I happened to find one of his books. It was a collection of essays called Alternating Current. And I found that book at random at a local bookstore in Austin, Texas. And yeah, so everything in it was just like mind blowing to me. Just the way that he wrote, just the way that he used words, was just really awe inspiring to me. So, you know, I slowly collected so many books of poetry of his, other books of essays. And yes, I did a library search for his name just to see, is there something else I don't know about? And so that's how I found this book. So this was a book that I would visit at school every now and then whenever I felt like I needed some inspiration, because to me, pleasure is restorative. And so when I think about, you know, creating things, that's part of what it is for me, is something that's restorative. And so this particular book, so In Praise of Hands, this is actually an exhibition catalog. And what that means is it's basically a collection of pieces that were in an exhibition. And this was an exhibition from 1974 that was held in Canada. And what's great about it is that they featured all these different artisans from around the world, from I think maybe 50 different countries. And they all sort of showed their handicrafts at this exhibition. So all different types of stuff. And what I thought was so cool about this book, which is so different from, you know, maybe what we see today in museums, is that all of these artisans were put side by side as contemporary peers, contemporary artists. And it wasn't this sort of, you know, viewing of these cultures as people from the past, but people that were creating now, that had work that had value, that that could stand next to any other artist at the time. So everything that was shown at this exhibition was created within the past 4 years. So I think since 1970. So the exhibition was 74. So the artwork had to have been created, you know, within 4 years prior. And so that's what I think is so awesome, because stuff like this, if you see it now to 2021, what is probably in a glass case, lent by, you know, some rich donor. And you know, and so there's all this speculation about what these things were for, and it's really separated from the culture and the actual people. So it's sometimes in a way dehumanizing. And so that's what I love about this, these pieces being respected on their own merits, and the cultures along with them. And so there's an essay in here that I wanted to share. So I'm going to share part of it now, and then I'll end with a little bit later. So this is what inspires me, and is also part of my ethos and what I feel about craft, and being someone who creates. And so I'll start now. So it says, the industrial object tends to disappear as a form, and to become indistinguishable from its function. Its being is its meaning, and its meaning is to be useful. It is the diametrical opposite of the work of art. Craft work is a mediation between these two poles. Its forms are not governed by the principle of efficiency, but of pleasure, which is always wasteful, and for which no rules exist. The industrial object allows the superfluous no place. Craftwork delights in decoration. Its predilection for ornamentation is a violation of the principle of efficiency. The decorative patterns of the handcrafted object generally have no function whatsoever. Hence, they are ruthlessly eliminated by the industrial designer. The persistence and the proliferation of purely decorative motifs in craftwork reveal to us an intermediate zone between usefulness and aesthetic contemplation. In the work of handcraftsmen, there's a constant shifting back and forth between usefulness and beauty. The continual interchange has a name: pleasure. Things are pleasing because they're useful and beautiful. This copulative conjunction defines craftwork, just as a disjunctive conjunction defines art and technology, usefulness or beauty. The handcrafted object satisfies a need no less imperative than hunger and thirst, the need to take delight in the things that we see and touch, whatever their everyday uses may be. This necessity is not reducible either to the mathematical ideal that acts as the norm for industrial design or to the strict rites of the religion of art. The pleasure that craftwork gives us is a twofold transgression against the cult of usefulness and against the cult of art. And so that's where I'm gonna hold for now while we get started, and then I'll come back and we'll end with the final piece. But so what that means to me in a way is how unfortunate it is that art and craft tends to be separated, and craft tends to be something that's looked down upon. As I mentioned earlier, I was born in the Philippines. My mother's side of the family is from the Philippines. My father's side is Mexican American from South Texas. And, a lot of the craft that comes from the Philippines, is seen as, folk art, not as fine art as, some people may define art as. And it's really unfortunate that, there has to be this separation. Yet when corporations sort of commodify these crafts, right, and appropriate designs, then it's something of value, or how, things are sort of dressed up as craft, right? Or we hear about like craft breweries or like small batch items, or things that are distressed to look like they were made by hand. So, it's clear that there's a value of it, but it depends on who's making it. And so, I hope by the end of this, you come away with feeling like you have so much power in your own hands to do so much, and to create things of value, and to create things that bring you pleasure, that, remind you of moments, remind you of people. And so, yeah, so let's get started. And I just want to make sure, let's see if I still have, okay, so I still have my other screen up. So what I'm going to do, yes, spotlight that one, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to turn off my other video so that way it doesn't look weird. Okay, thank you. And I hope everybody, or some of you all brought stuff to work on. I know, what's that?
You could keep your video on if you want, or if you're like going to be like with your head down, it's fine if you want it off. Because we can have two people, both of them up.
I might
whichever one you
make
prefer,
weird faces. Okay, yeah, we can put both up. So Alicia, I know you brought something to work on. And has anyone else, just kind of curious really quick before we get started, has anyone else sewn before? You can type in the chat or put a little emoji. Okay, Sherwania High School. Great, not very well. That's okay, that's okay. Yay, yes, my favorite self-care practice. I love that, fellow sewer. So not much, okay, that's okay. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's get started. So on this screen here, here's what we're gonna practice today. So I have my diagram here of these stitches. So I have a running stitch up here. We have a back stitch, and this is gonna be the one that you're gonna use the most often. So this is the type of stitch that you're gonna use to construct things, attach pieces together, This is a stitch that you will use to attach things. So there's so many uses. So this is your basic stitch. Like if you had a sewing machine, this is what it would do, but it would make it really uniform and really strong. I've sewn these with embroidery thread. So this is a little bit different from this regular sewing thread, because I just wanted you to be able to see it. So I wanted you to be able to see this up close. So so when I'm doing the instruction, I'll probably use this thread just because it's a little easier to see. And then once we get working on the projects, then I'll switch over to this so that we can both be doing the same thing. Okay, and then we have a blanket stitch. And so I've done different widths here. And this one is such a beautiful stitch. I love this one. You could really wow people with this one. It's a lot easier than you think it is. And I think a lot of you are really gonna like this one because you can use it a lot, like especially with the applique techniques that I wanna show you. This just makes a really nice finishing on the edge because you can attach, you know, like a patch of some kind over a hole. And you can either use your straight stitch all the way around, or you can do this blanket stitch and it looks super cute. It just gives it a little bit more whimsy, a little bit more interest. And you know, you can use a thread that really stands out because it's not so much like to me. So what my ethos with like mending things is like, I want you to see that I fixed it. You know, it's to me, it's so much more fun when it's very intentional. That, yeah, I love this thing so much that, you know, I kept patching it up and it looks cool. Um and so yes, I want you to be okay with that. But you know, if you want to be a little more discreet, you can find a matching thread that'll disappear, and that's okay too. Okay, and then this last one is a ladder stitch, and I saved some room so we can do a little bit more. And so this one is really great for if you have a tear in something, and we'll create some chaos later and we'll tear this fabric, and then that's when we'll do this stitch. But let me just show you really quick. I left my needle in here. So once you have this sewn, you can see the magic. Ta-da! When you pull it, that's gonna hide everything. So that brings it all together. Okay, so that's the ladder stitch. All right, so let's get started. I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna introduce a few of the materials. So, so I had a little list, I guess it was maybe on Facebook that the list was on. I'll leave this up out of here for now. Okay, so the things that I had you guys collect is gonna be a needle. So I have a few different needles here. So this is my regular sewing needle and have a little bit of thread on it. This is not enough to do anything with, but I have this. So needle, I'm gonna use, like I said, a little bit wider one so that way I can use the embroidery floss. So you can see that, you kind of really see the eye on this one here is much, much wider than this one here. So I've got our needles, a thread of some kind, right? Always, always scissors. Gotta have scissors. And then your project that you're gonna work on. If you have an applique, like I pulled out, you know, a few little things if you wanted to patch something up, we have that. And then it's always great to have a pin cushion of some kind for safety, because you don't want to accidentally drop your needles or pins somewhere and step on them or lose them if you only have one. You can also use, if you have a spool of thread, you can use that, no problem. You know, just use what you have. I have also here a little tea light. You can poke holes in it, you can use it. So whatever you have. This right here, this is something my mom made for me for my birthday. She put it in a little cupcake paper. And so it was like a little cupcake and had little pins on it. So I still have that. All right, so let's work on these stitches. So first thing we're gonna have to do is thread our needle. And so I have this piece of felt here. Felt is so easy to work with because it doesn't really fray. The edges don't really fray. And I'm gonna bring out our chart here. Okay, so we're gonna start with this running stitch. This is the most basic stitch you could think of, okay? And so everybody that has a project, we're gonna thread our needle for the first time. And so, like I said, I'm gonna use this embroidery floss so that you can see as much as possible. And when you're hand sewing, you don't want to get a lot of thread because you can actually get it tangled up and that can be really frustrating. So just get, you know, as much, maybe about, I'm sorry, I don't know metric. I'm sorry. Like there'd be like a foot. So maybe like, you can also use your hands as a measuring tool, a couple hands worth. So that's always good. So I'm going to trim that. And then what we'll need to do is thread that through here. And what I will usually do is I will double my thread. This one's going to be kind of challenging. So sometimes you may need to wet that. I have a little bit of water here to wet that. You can use your saliva too. Let's get that through that hole, pull it through. And if you were going to double your thread, you would pull this all the way through. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's where the ends meet. They're at the same length. So that would be a doubling of your thread. And then what you want to do is you want to tie off the end. So you're going to tie a knot. So just like, so you wrap it around your finger and then you take the little tail and wrap it through your loop once, as you do 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. And then you pull it while pushing this as far as you can to the end so that way you're not wasting your thread. And now you have a knot. So that way, once you thread your needle through your fabric, this won't come all the way out because you want it to stay put. Okay, so like I said, we're going to do this running stitch. And the way we start is from back to the front because whatever you're working on, you're always going to start in the back. So this is the back of my fabric. So I'm going to pull my needle through here. And it comes out the front and I'll pull it all the way and you can see it stop. And it stopped because I had my knot there. And then to do the running stitch, you're gonna just decide how wide you want your stitches to be. And so I'm gonna go about here. So we're gonna do this in 2 parts. So we're gonna go in from the front and then rather than pulling the needle all the way through, you can see it's just part way through. You're gonna come back in and you can kind of see the needle poking out. Maybe that's a little bit too big. So maybe I wanna make it a little smaller, pull it back in, and that looks pretty good. So that's how we're gonna start it. So every time we make a stitch, it's gonna look like that. And then you pull your thread all the way through, and then you make your next stitch. So you're gonna leave a gap here. So you can see the running stitch has gaps in between because it's a really light stitch. Because this may be one that you're gonna pull out later. You can use this stitch if you maybe don't have these straight pins. This can be really helpful because sometimes when you're hand sewing and you're attaching 2 pieces together, when you have a pin there, sometimes your thread can get caught on it, get snagged on it. And that can be really annoying and it can really slow you down. So while it may seem redundant to do a running stitch and then a back stitch, sometimes it can actually speed up your process a little because you're not getting snagged on these straight pins, the head of the straight pins. Okay, and then, so we're gonna go back in and then pick a place to come out. And then that's our second stitch. And then let's do one more. Here.
Your overhead camera.
To be on. I thought it was on Do Not Disturb. Sorry, guys. Just a second. We got a phone call. Okay. All right. So we were here, and I'm going to do one more. And Dominic asks, will you show us how to join the thread as well? Does that mean, do you mean finishing it at the end? Dominic, you can get on the mic if you're here. I'm gonna make sure I answer that question. Okay, well, we'll wait. Okay, so we'll finish it there so we can move on. So that's our running stitch. And so I'm going to, actually we can finish this right here. I might have a little bit, we'll finish and end when we do the back stitch. So I'm gonna cut that here and leave that. And I'm gonna pick a different color. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna thread this through. Oh, I see. Okay, I got you, Dominic. So when you're working on a big project and you're hand sewing, you're gonna have to be okay with stopping and starting. And so what that means is you're not so much gonna connect your threads. What you're gonna do is you're gonna sew a portion and you're gonna tie it off. So you're gonna make a knot, and then that's gonna be it. So whatever thread that you have, you can only work so far with it, and you would just tie it off. And then you would start from the beginning again. So you would just repeat this process every time. So just like we did before with the running stitch, we're gonna make a knot. So 1, 2, 3, okay. And then again, start from the back to the front. Okay. And then again, we're gonna start from right to left. So we're gonna make another stitch. So we're gonna go in, and then we're gonna come back out just like we did before. But instead of repeating that, we're gonna go back. So that's why it's called a back stitch. So we're gonna put our needle back, not quite in the same hole where we went in before, just a little bit next to it. So if you can see that, we're gonna go back in, and then we're gonna come back out again with the length of our stitch through there. Boom. So now you got 2 stitches there. Okay, so I got one more time. So I'm gonna go a little bit next to that last stitch into the fabric. And then back out. Boom. So now I got 3. And so I don't have a lot of thread left. So Dominic, so you can see, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna finish this off here. So I'm gonna go back in here, and instead of coming back out, let me turn it over and let me tie this off. So this is how it looks from the back, the two different stitches. So the way we're going to tie that off is we're just going to get a little bit of fabric. So not much at all, because you don't want to make it too visible from the other side. So you just want a little bit of fabric, and then you're just going to make a knot. So you can do almost what you did earlier, but you're going to wrap it around the needle. So 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to pull your needle through and make sure you hold that knot, because you're going to want to press that through. So you got to pull the threads individually. It's going to be difficult, but that's okay. So you can see that there. And so now, so since I have a knot there, it's perfectly fine to go ahead and cut it. And so if you need to continue that, you would just start as we did before. So this is all you can sew right now, because that's all the thread that you have. Okay. And so then you would start, you know, if you had a knot at the end, you would just pick back up and continue there. So you're not going to connect anything at all. So you're just gonna start over from that. Okay. All right. So next, we're getting short on time here. A little less time than I thought. Okay. Let's do this awesome blanket stitch. I want to at least make sure that y'all see that one. Okay, I'll get some more thread. It's a different color. So this ladder stitch, so we've been going from right to left with these stitches. The ladder stitch, we're going to go from, the blanket stitch, we're going to go from left to right this time. Okay, and so this time I'm just going to use a single thread. I'm not going to double it up. So I'm just going to leave like a little tail. So I'm not going to pull this all the way to the end, so that way I have a little bit more to work with. But we're still going to adhere to the same principle and make a knot at the end, so that way it doesn't come through our fabric. So make our knot. So 1, 2, 3, and then pull that through. Okay, so we have our knot. And so this one, just show you an example here. The blanket stitch. So you see how I started up here. So we're still going to start from the back and come through the front. Pull my thread all the way through. You see I have my knot there. So this can look kind of tricky, and it looks kind of weird, like it might not work. But what we're going for, let me try to mark it out for you so you kind of know what my target is. So my target, when I go back into the fabric, is actually going to be down here. So rather than going across like we were before, I'm kind of going at a diagonal, and you'll see why. So we've come in from the back to the front, and then we're going to go at a diagonal into the fabric and back up in line with where we started. So you can kind of see where I went this way, and then I went back up to meet this. So you can kind of see a little triangle there. So that's sort of my direction. And before we push the needle all the way through, here's the cool part. You want to make sure that this thread that you started with is behind the needle. Because when you push this up and through, that's how the magic is created. Boom. Okay. And so that's what you're going to repeat. So now my next target, it really is, isn't it? Sorcery. is however wide you want this. So like my other example, maybe you want it really wide, maybe you really want them close together. It's up to you, depends on your project. So I'm gonna make this kind of close together. So my next target is gonna be a little ways from here. So we're gonna go back in. So in and then up, right? Just like we did before. And then, I don't want this here because it's not gonna do anything. You want this to go behind your needle, up, and pull it through. And see how that's going, right? So you start doing that, you're gonna wow a lot of people. Oh, it's just so easy, I mean, it takes a little bit of time, but that's the fun of it, it's just like follow through, so back in and up to meet this line here, right in line with that. And then I almost missed it. You're gonna put this behind the needle, back up and through. See, just like that. And we'll do one more because now we got to move on. So again, so we're looking at this hole here. You want to go a little bit next to that. Keep this out of the way. And then back up. And I already got my thread behind the needle before I pull it. Boom. Okay. So I'm gonna stop there. Sorry. If we have time for the ladder stitch, we'll come back to it, but I want to make sure that y'all can see how we would apply this. Okay. And then
Stacy
yes.
wants to know, is there a reason to start the blanket stitch from the left?
Well, that's just how I learned it.
Good enough.
That's just how I learned it. I don't really have a reason for it. I guess you could start it the other way. Maybe for lefties, maybe it's easier that way. But yeah, that's just how I learned it. There's a reason for it. I'm not sure. And then for this one, when you're at the end, obviously you'll need to tie this off so that way this isn't, rolling around. And all you do is just pull that through to the back. You want it close to that corner when you're doing that. And then same as before. So let's say you're tired. 4 stitches was a lot for today. I get it, and just do the same thing, So put your needle in, get a little bit of fabric, bring it back out. 1, 2, 3. Pull your needle through, and then make sure your other hand is pushing that knot down so that way it's not coming up. So you want to always make sure that you're pushing that knot so it's not coming up with the thread that you're pulling. Okay. And then you're finished for the day. Then you can start over if you want. Okay. So that's our blanket stitch, and it's so cool. I really, really love that one. Okay. So then we'll move on from there. And then let me show you the buttons. Okay. So y'all saw these in the promos. So these are some things you can do with buttons. And then look who we have here. So we have our running stitch from earlier. So here's another way you can use your running stitch. So I mentioned that you can use it to gather fabric. And with one thing you can do with it, so again, you can see more magic, is you can make covered buttons, sort of like a hat here. So I made a little covered button to match. So you would just get a piece of fabric and make it, a little larger than the button that you have. You would do your running stitch along the edge because you have your knot here. When you pull it, you can see it starts to gather. See, it's almost like a little pouch. And then if you have your button in the middle of that and you continue gathering. Yeah, see, you're getting ideas. Use this to cover crumbling headphones, anything. you know? Like, what if that, you know, this button wasn't looking so hot, or you just wanted something cool, you know? So look at that. Now you've got a cover button that you can attach, and, you know, you would just finish that off. You would, you know, make a knot somewhere. You know, you've pulled it as tight as you can. You could even stuff it with some, if you have like some like polyester fill, if you want to give it like a little puffiness, you could do that before you close it up. And you would go into, so my thread is here. So when I pulled it tight, I gotta make sure that it stays there. So I'm gonna go to the opposite end, and I'm just gonna do this really quick. So I'm gonna go into the opposite end, just anywhere I can pick up fabric, and then come back out to that side. And see, and this is where something like a thimble might be handy. This is a thimble. Sometimes your fabric is really tough. You just press that through, okay? Oops, I lost my thread. And then I don't have my needle, but same idea, is we're gonna do our, oops, that looks terrible, sorry. 1, 2, 3. And so I'm gonna make a quick little knot here. And you would actually wanna do that a few times on this button, so that way it's fully secure from the back there. But there you go. So then you can just attach it that way. And then let me show you really quick how you could attach the button. I'm actually gonna open this guy up, open this back up so we can use that one. Because I know this is one that a lot of people kind of, you slack off on and you just let it go. You let your shirts hang open because you don't know what you're doing. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna get my needle. I'm gonna thread this back. And I always with buttons, double the thread, because you want it to be as strong as possible. So we did this earlier, right? Doubled our thread. And then at the end, we make our little knot, 2, 3, okay. And I'm gonna pull this yellow back out so you can see it, okay. And we're gonna start from the back again. And what I usually do is almost like how we finished, that's how I usually start. So I make a little stitch, and then my knot comes through, and then I do one more, okay, and then I wrap it, 1, 2, 3, okay, just like that. And then I come through to the other side, okay, and then that's where we can thread our button through the needle, or thread the needle through the button. Okay, so I only have 2 holes on this one, so this one's super easy, but the same would apply if you had 4 holes, like some of these others. But you would just go through that one all the way to the back, right? Pull that through. And you would want to do this with regular thread, certainly like a few times. And it can be tricky. So you have to just kind of try to look, I don't know if you can see, get your needle through to that first hole you started with, and then back out. And just to save time, what we would do to finish this is a part that some people don't really know, is when you're about to be done, you go through that final hole, and instead of going back through the fabric, you just go through the hole, okay, and pull your thread through. And what you're gonna do with this tail now, you wanna make sure you have enough, is you're gonna wind it around these threads, because you want this to have a little bit of movement. And that's what keeps it from pulling your fabric. So you're gonna just wind this around these 2 threads. that we have. So I'm going to wind this around. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, however many times you need. But now you can see we almost have a little post here now. So it kind of wobbles on top because buttons move, you know, unless they're just simply decorative. So if it's a functional button and you need it to work, you want it to be able to move. So I'm just gonna do one more, and then now we can finish it. Now you can go back from the front to the back of your fabric. Pull that through, and then do your final knot. So into the fabric, back out. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now I trim the end. So now you have a really sturdy button back on your clothing. Okay. And then so you can do stuff like, I have this little example. So I have just this little scrap of fabric. You put a button on it, and then ta-da, you just cut a hole in the other side, and you've got a little cuff. So you can do stuff like that with your scraps. So those are our 3 stitches. And then in application, I just wanted to show you some examples. So for instance, that blanket stitch. So this is like a little pen case that I abandoned, unfortunately, because I didn't use the right type of fabric for it. But you can see how I used that to patch on this, this little horse design, and I made it a pocket. So this is a combination of our blanket stitch. So we have something cool and decorative, it makes it a little more interesting. And then our straight stitch, right, along the edges here, and it's a pocket. And so this is cut from, so I had this, this wooden stamp, and I just used some screen printing ink to stamp it onto the fabric. And then you can do that. So you can cut it out and attach it like that with the blanket stitch. And then you can, here's another one that I have. So this is actually a tote bag that I made, and kind of same idea. I made actually it might be easier to show you here. I have this tote bag, and so I had this print. This isn't one of my prints, but I had gotten this print from someone else, and you can see I have the blanket stitch all along the edge, and attached it as a pocket right here. So that's a way you can kind of combine those things, and you know, and patch up things like holes, you know, such as something like this. Very sad. I got a hole in this because I didn't cut that right. But, you know, again, you can just find something that kind of coordinates with that. And you just put this on top, you know, and you can do your straight stitch along the edge, or you can do your blanket stitch if you want something a little bit more decorative on the edge of that. And then also don't forget that if you need templates for something, don't overlook stuff like this, like the that covered button that we did earlier. This is the template that I used for that, for this piece of fabric. So I can use this every time. I can use this template every time that I need this shape. You know, you can use plates, you know, anything you have at home, even these these threads here, you can trace that as a template. And then you can just make stuff. I know a lot of people are like making masks. So I have a couple cute little masks here. You know, you can start constructing stuff. So you go from like, you know, just patching stuff up. You can actually construct things. And so this is all just straight stitches. That's all it is. Just a straight stitch that we learned, that that back stitch. So you can start constructing things like this, you know, that you enjoy. It's a little less boring, right, than some of the stuff that, you know, you might get at the corner store. And then another tip that I have is just to label things. One more tip is to like label things. So if you have like a running pile of stuff that you need to fix, this is what I do. Get a safety pin and a little note and write what needs to happen with this. The hem on this needs to be fixed. This has been like this for months, so I don't wear it. And it's not even a hard thing to do. And if all else fails, okay, if that's still a bit much, I'm gonna wrap it up here. If that's still a bit much, there are even things like this hem tape that you can use. So you can use this with an iron. So this one in particular is called Heat and Bond, but you can find rolls of this type of tape. And let's say that you have a hem that needs to be fixed and you can't deal with the needle and thread. No shame. Totally use this. It's super quick, super easy. You can even use this for your appliques. You can even put a little bit of this on the back and use it like glue, and then just iron that on. Just like, you know, any kind of patches you might get. That's what it is. That's all it is, that adhesive on the back. So you could just put a few strips of this on there, iron it, boom, you're done. And it's a lot faster. All right. So I hope you all had a great time, and I hope that you all can, you know, really just start looking at stuff. Like I have this old bag, you know, and just kind of think, you know, just examine stuff and think like, how is that made? You know, could I do that? You know, and just be curious and open to the possibilities of what you can do with just a simple back stitch. That's all this is, just a straight stitch used to construct all of this. You know, just turn stuff inside out, you know, and just think like, okay, how is this done? How is this made? You know, and then yeah, if you get a new sewing machine, that'll make it even faster. That'll make it even faster. If you find that you love it so much and you want to keep going with it, that'll just open up your world even more when you get a sewing machine. A little bit of help is really great. All right, does anybody have any other questions for me that I can answer, or want to show me what they were working on? You have questions on?
The little bag that you did, I did sewing classes when I was like 9 or something. And the first project was to make this drawstring bag. And I'm pretty sure it took me hours to get the string through. Do you have any tricks for doing that kind of thing?
Do you mean this this part here to get it through?
Yeah.
Yes. If you have a safety pin, that's the trick. So have a safety pin, have safety pins in a couple sizes. This one's pretty big, but this might actually fit. And this is basically what you would use to get, I wish I had something here. But I could probably use this as an example. So let's say you need to get that through, and you could attach, oh dear, sorry. All right, I'm just gonna have to go with that. So you have your string here, and this is what will guide that through. So you've already got this hole here. So when you put this down that channel, you can use this to pull that. Instead of just having to figure out how that soft, loose, wiggly string is going to get through, So now you can see, if I keep pulling, the safety pin is gonna pull that out, and you can see, here it is at the other end. So safety pins are so handy. And you can even be really punk and use safety pins to attach your appliques to, so that's great for like denim jackets, right? This is way too big, but it gets the job done.
This is
Anything
awesome.
else?
The chat was really on fire as you were doing a lot of your expos, but I think we kind of got to most as they came. Any last questions?
Great.
Let's see. Um, cool. Anybody have anything to show if you feel comfortable? Do you do any of these kinds of tutorials on any of your social media, Hermie?
I don't.
Okay, so this was kind of like the first tester.
Yeah, it really was. And I think that's why I ran out of time.
Yeah, but I feel like
I
you
had
could probably
so many ideas.
to just like show us all of these tricks of the trade.
Yeah, it was pretty ambitious, but yeah, so I hope some of y'all caught on. I mean, definitely get on YouTube. Like, I wish I had YouTube when I was, younger, and I could have caught on to so many things so much quicker. But yeah, as long as you know the names of things. So if you wanna go back, get on YouTube and look up, dear me, sorry, to change my thing again. The running stitch, back stitch, or the blanket stitch. You want to learn that some more? Just get on YouTube and look for those things now that you know what they're called, and you can just keep practicing. Keep practicing, feel empowered, and believe that you can give things a second life, and you can really keep stuff out of the landfill. You know, don't be afraid to cut things, cut it up. It's doing you no good in a drawer, so might as well put it on something else. Put a little patch on your shirt, just with these little techniques.
Awesome. Yeah, and I guess that is a good point too in terms of the environmental benefit of reusing your clothes as often as you can. But this was great, Hermie. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much.